All right, let's get started. Okay, so I see there are quite a few of you here. Thank you for joining us for the Performance and Development webinar. Today we'll be focusing on feedback and cycles within P&D. So today we have a few guests joining, or a few of my colleagues joining us. So from the customer success side, we have Paul joining us for chat support. So he will be on chat if you guys have any questions. He'll be there, but also he'll be sharing a Slido, more on that to come. And then we also have Camille from our product team, who focuses on performance and development specifically. She will be able to support with answering of some of your live questions later on today, but also giving you some exciting updates of what's to come with performance and development. Like if you guys have been using performance and development for a while at Personio, you've probably noticed a lot of changes. Camille is one of the backbones behind that, so very great to have her on the call as well. All right, so next I just wanted to go into the agenda and run you through a little bit about what we're going to go over today. So quickly, we'll go over an introduction of performance and development, why it's important for many organizations, and how you can run performance and development cycles in Personio. Then we'll go into a live demo where we will explore how to run a cycle, so build a cycle from scratch, look into the analytics aspects so you can get those very high-level overview of insights into how your employees are performing. And then also we'll go into the continuous feedback area so you can run a organization that is open to receiving feedback at any time. And then at the end, we will go into a Q&A. So what we'll do is we have a Slido. You can either press the Slido link in the chat, or you can use the QR code that we'll share in the next slide, scan it with your phone, and then we will answer those questions at the end. So another cool thing about Slido is that you are able to upvote questions. So to avoid duplicated questions, we can see which questions are most important to you. Feel free to upvote your fellow Personio users' questions. And then we will go into some of those exciting product updates of what's to come. We are also going to share any unanswered questions from the Slido in a follow-up email, so no worries if we don't have enough time to cover it today. Just really quickly, my colleague Paul is going to share a quick poll. We wanted to get some insight from you guys on how often you run performance development cycles. So he will share that in just a second, and then we'll give you guys we'll give you guys 1 minute to give a quick response, just so we have a general sense check of how things are at your organization. Very cool. So I'm just looking at the poll right now, and I can see that there is a very good distribution amongst the number of employees that you guys have in your organization. And then also when we look at how often you guys use Personio to run performance cycles, there's also a lot of variance as well. Some have never used it, some have used it multiple times. And I think that's also great because if there are questions that you have, we also have the Personio community where you can ask questions about how to run performance cycles, just to bounce ideas off of each other. But of course, we're here to help as well. And then also some people mentioned that they run it quarterly, half yearly, once a year. So also people are running it quite frequently. And then the last question was on if it's managed centrally or not. And most people said that it is managed centrally. So using a system like Personio is a great way to manage that centrally. All right. Great. So if we go into the next slide, I am going to quickly share the Slido link. So this is the QR code which you can scan in order to ask questions on Slido. Give you guys a couple seconds to grab that. Okay, now we'll hop into the first portion of today, which is giving you a quick introduction of performance and development. So the first thing I wanted to kind of review was why we believe performance and development is so important for organizations. We were looking at a McKinsey study which asked 1,800 companies how developing talent has an impact on their organization. And they found that many of these companies who had strong performance and development processes were also had a performance edge and had 30% higher revenue growth. So a massive impact, not only on the individuals who are inspired and excited and eager to continue working and develop and grow, but they also had an impact on the revenue of the organization as well. So when we look at Personio, we can see that this performance edge can be executed through streamlined performance and development management. So we've really aimed to make it very simple to create those performance reviews. Also using this talent data to make sure that all um, like reviews are done fairly and consistently. And then also we wanted to facilitate that continuous growth by allowing for employees to have that 360-degree feedback and opportunity to give their feedback whenever feedback is due. All right, so next we are going to hop into the live demo of Personio. Okay, perfect. Can everyone see my screen okay? All good? Okay. So here we are on the Personio homepage. First, what we're going to do is look into the performance and development section. So you'll find the performance tab just here. And then we can also see the overview of feedback, cycles, goals, and settings. For today, we're going to focus on the settings and feedback and cycles. So kind of as a prerequisite to building your cycle, you'll need to create form templates. And to do so, you would go into the settings section. And here there are other things that you can also configure. So if we look at the forms, this is where we would create those form templates to build the basis of how employees will submit their reviews. And then we also have this new beta feature called performance rating. This will allow you to have one standardized question, which allows you to measure the basis of how employees are performing. This is a standardized question which you can build the template of how this looks. So it's not something that's centrally managed by Personio, but rather you as an organization can decide how you build out this performance rating. It's currently in beta, and it would be available for managers to give notes on. And then we also have sharing and confidentiality. This is just showing us the default privacy settings, and then feature visibility, so allowing us to decide what employees can see. So for today's demo, we're going to go into the forms and the performance rating. So if we click into forms, we can see that there are several different forms that are already completed. So we have continuous feedback that's already completed. Here we can have this overview of how that looks, but if we wanted to, we can also edit this, and then we can also use the three dots to duplicate it. Say you have another feedback form that should have a very similar structure, and you just want to make a couple quick edits, you can duplicate the form, but you can also delete the form as well. For this example, I just wanted to create a new form to show you how that looks and how simple it is, but also show you all the different questions that you can ask, because there are quite a few different question types. So I'm just going to say review form. And then you can see that you'll always see my name attached. You can enable the form for continuous feedback. So if I'm going to give feedback about someone else, then I would also be able to access this form to guide my review. You can also use or toggle this to make it the default form as well. For this example, I'm just going to not allow it. You'll also be able to add an introduction. Perhaps you want to show your employees the purpose of this review form, or maybe you want to even show them what good feedback looks like. You can add that here in the introduction. You can also create multiple sections if there are different categories that you're looking to create. We can add sections through this here, and then we can also add a title and a description for the specific section as well. And then we can also add additional questions. And then if we wanted to add additional questions, we can always use these like this drag and drop option to reformulate how the form will look. And then you can also preview it here. So for example, I'm going to build a new question. I'll just say question. And then we are going to show you the different ways in which you can gather or ask the question. So we have the enter response option, which will allow you to have open text. So ask a question and the employee can then add an open text just here. And then we have the descriptive scale, which allows you to add up to, I believe it's as well, because this will allow you to further analyze the data later on if it is connected to a manager review. And then you can also use the numeric scale option as well. Enable context comments for additional context. We can also add the multiple choice option. You can add whether you want to allow employees to select multiple items on the multiple options, or if you just want them to select one. Then we also have the traffic light option, so you can see, you can ask it in a traffic light type of situation, like what should they stop, start, or continue. And then there's also the binary questions that you can ask, so yes or no, just as an example. You can also set these as private and require or not require those questions to be answered. Then we would simply just save the form, and then it would show up in our form templates that at the screen that we had just seen. But for now, I'm just going to delete this form. All right. So the other thing I wanted to show you was on the performance ratings. This would be one question that's connected to the manager review. We'll show you the option in just a second of how to add that to your cycle. So when you look at the employee performance evaluation, this is something that you'd be able to edit and customize for your organization's needs. And there are two options. You have the two scaled options, so you can add a descriptive scale or a numeric scale as well. All right, I'm going to cancel and not save those changes. And then we'll go into the first part. Okay, so once you have those forms created, then the second part would actually be to create a performance and development cycle. Before we go into that, I'm just going to show you a quick overview of how the cycles page looks. So here we can see an overview of all cycles. We would also be able to use the status feature to see what's in draft mode, meaning what are we just developing, what is scheduled, so what have we launched and are waiting for the first activity to be complete or to be activated, what is live, so what has a live and active review, and then what is closed. So what is something that you've actually closed yourself to end the cycle. You can also use the search functionality to search for the specific names. So for example, if I wanted to just see drafts, then I can, oops, there are no drafts. But if we wanted to see the scheduled ones, then we can see the scheduled here. All right. After we build the cycle, I'm going to hop into two of these cycles, so the performance cycle here, and then the one from the past that's already closed, just so you can see what that looks like. So first, we'll go into the create the cycle. This will be the getting started screen where we can name the cycle. So I'm just going to say webinar, so I know that this is from our webinar. We can say when the cycle is going to start. So for this, we can say it starts tomorrow. That means the first action is going to be due to start tomorrow. Then we'll go into next. Here we can select the cycle participants that we want to add. For this, we would be able to use the filtering rules. These are also dynamic filtering rules. So if someone changes, then you'll also receive a notification saying that the employees that have eligibility to be part of the cycle have also changed, and you can add them to the cycle at a later stage if this cycle is still open. Another thing to note is that these are the default options that we've added in Personio. So that is that an employee is internal and that their hire date is 6 months before, meaning that they've passed probation and are eligible for the cycle. You can add additional rules. I can show you what those rule types are. And then you can also include specific people or exclude specific people as well. You're also not tied to those specific ones, so you can delete them here. But then if I scroll down, I can see a high-level overview of who all these employees are that will be part of this specific cycle. All right, So now that I'm going to go with the default settings, we're going to click next. And here we can see the different cycle activities that will be part of this review cycle. So we have manager reviews, so managers giving reviews about their direct reports. We have the performance rating that's in beta right now. This is the form that I showed you earlier. It will just be that one standardized score. We can enable it here. Then we also have the self-reviews, so employees giving reviews about themselves, peer reviews, and then upward reviews, so employees giving reviews about their managers. We can, let's say we're going to just enable upward reviews, and for some reason the management team has decided that we don't want to include peer reviews for this cycle. So we can create the draft, and now we have an overview of the timeline of when these cycles are due to be done, and then we can also review the different cycles and make changes to how they're going to be. And if at any time we've decided, like management has decided that they want to include peer reviews, we can add that activity here. As long as the cycle is not closed, then we can still continue to add that. And then if we go into upward reviews, here actually, sorry, let me go back. I'm just going to add the peer reviews here. Okay, so now in the peer reviews, we can select the duration. So we are going to say that the peers will have until May 30th to complete their review, and then we can select a specific form. These are the forms that we have created in that last, or in the settings area. So we can say peer review 2025 will be included. We can also set reminders. So say we want to remind the peers that they need to do it one day before the due date. We can say maybe 4 days before the due date, and you can set up to 4 reminders. And then we also have the sharing and confidentiality settings. So this will allow us to decide centrally whether the supervisor, or sorry, whether the peers can share it with the recipients, whether the reviewers can decide whether it should default be shared or whether it should not be shared. And then you can also set the confidentiality settings as well, whether the employee or whether the name should be shared or not. This is really dependent on what you guys want, but yeah, like at Personio, we typically share the names of the recipients just for transparency and the fact that they can go to that employee and ask for the feedback directly as well. Then we can save this activity, and then we can go into the next one. So for upward reviews, maybe we'll have a similar timeline, and we'll just say quick feedback for this. We can set the reminders. Maybe we set 5 days, so very similar to the last one, and then share the sharing settings, which are very similar as well. And then we can also decide how people are selected to write upward reviews. So whether it's automatic for all direct reports or if the supervisor decides. So I'm going to save this activity, and then we'll go into self-reviews. So very similar. Maybe we say it goes with the same guidelines of the previous one. So they have between May 16th to May 30th to submit this review. We're going to select the form, and then we'll do, I believe there was an employee self-reflection form, and then we'll set the reminders 7 days before due date, and then save that activity. And then for the manager reviews. Here, we're going to stagger it a little bit different just to give managers extra time to complete their reviews. So we're going to prolong it a couple weeks. And then we can decide exactly this, which form we will share or we will have the managers use to review, so supervisor feedback. And then here we can use the setting for performance rating, that is that we saw earlier. We can decide whether we want to activate this or not. And then we can set the reminders and choose the sharing settings as well. Another thing to note about the sharing settings is that it's really helpful, for example, if you allow the managers to then decide when they want to share the feedback. You can either you can allow this in the screen overview where you can see all the employees. But another thing which is really helpful is after that manager has that review with their employee, they can share that feedback with their employee directly. So they're not receiving the feedback too soon before they've had the chance to have a conversation with their manager and get additional context on that. All right, so I'll save the activity here. And then we can review and schedule the cycle. I'm actually not going to schedule it right now, but rather go back to, oops, ah, did I do this? Okay, there we go. Here it is. All right, so when we go, we're going to go into a cycle that is currently live. This is one that was created by one of my colleagues, just to get an overview of how it looks when we have this overview of all the employees who are included in the cycle and the status. So here we're really able to see what is the status of this current cycle. We can see from a high level overview what percentage of people have completed each of these forms. We can see here what the status is specifically. We can also schedule the performance review meetings, and then employees, managers, and you as the admin will have the ability to ask peers to review those specific employees. We can also, for example, if you have a large organization and you wanted to hone in on a specific department, then you can also use the filter to look into department, supervisor, workplace, etc. And then we can also edit participants. So if you wanted to add someone who was previously excluded, you can add them to the cycle there. And then we'd also have the ability to edit a cycle. For this cycle in particular, it's in the past, so all of these reviews have been in the past. But for example, if there was a cycle that is ongoing, that has already started but is continuing to be ongoing, then we can go into it and also make edits to the end date. So for example, if you at a later stage find out that the end date of your cycle is actually on a public holiday, then you can also change the date of when that end date is. All right. Okay, so going back into the performance area, I wanted to show you a closed cycle so we can look at how it looks like from an analytics perspective. I think the analytics perspective is quite interesting because it allows us to see from a high level how employees are performing. So let's see here. I'm going to quickly go into the analytics. All right. So with this, then we can see all the ratings that were received by managers for these specific scaled questions. We have two options where you can either see it as a chart type or you can see it as a box grid. A column or a box grid. But when we look at the column, then we can see the distribution of how employees are measured. So we can see that this has a very nice curve where most people match expectations. We have a few that are outstanding, or one that is outstanding, and we have none that are critical. So that's quite interesting. And then you'd also be able to look into these employees directly here. Let's see, you also have the ability to use the same filter options that we had in the previous view. So if you wanted to look into a specific department to see how that standard distribution looks for that specific scaled question, then we can also see maybe there's some inconsistencies between the different departments, and we'd be able to identify that at this high level analytics overview. We can also use the box grid. The box grid is also really helpful when it comes to assessing whether an employee performs very well and has high potential for growth. So we can use this to see the horizontal, or we can select the questions that should be in the horizontal axes and also in the vertical axes as well. If you guys do have the performance, the standardized performance question, then this would also be listed on the horizontal axis as well as a default. And then we can also, select how are they performing versus what is their motivation, and then we can see where they fall in this line. If I wanted to understand exactly who the employee is that's extremely high performer, I can also click on this to see who that employee is. And I can see that Cora is our outstanding performer. All right. Okay, so now that we've looked into the cycle analytics of this, we are going to now take a step back and look at how to set a foundation for continuous feedback. But I also wanted to show you where the feedback comes, or where the yeah, where the feedback forms come in the employee's experience. So when a cycle is triggered, the employee will see in their inbox that they have some items to do. So if we go specifically into the inbox, we can look and use the filter section, use the topic, and filter for performance specific things. But again, this would also just show up in their inbox. You don't need to use the filter section because I have a request from Paul just here. And then let's see here. Another thing that's really helpful when it comes to giving feedback is making an announcement to encourage people to give continuous feedback. If you have a feedback cycle, you can also use this to announce to your employees that there is also a current performance review cycle as well. All right, so on the topic of building a environment that encourages continuous feedback, we will go back into the performance area and go into the feedback section. So here, as an admin for the entire organization, I can search for every single employee. If I am a direct or an individual contributor, I wouldn't be able to see everyone's information. I could only see my own. And then if I am a manager, then I can also see my direct reports feedback if the feedback was shared with me. When I look here, I can see all the items that I have to do. For example, with the feedback that was requested by Paul, I can go into it and I can see I was creating a draft, and the draft is still there. So it's convenient that your changes are saved. We can also go into the About Me, where I can see the feedback that I've received. And then I can also go into the About Others to see what I've given to others. To request, all of the feedback that came from the performance and development cycles will land in this to-do area for me as an individual contributor, or I guess everyone would also receive it. Okay, so first we are going to go into request feedback. So here we'll be able to request feedback from anyone in the organization. So I can request feedback about myself or about someone. So if I'm a manager and I have like a direct report that I wanted to receive feedback about how they worked on a specific project, then I can enter their name in and gather that feedback from any employee within the organization. So I can, for example, Elena, I'm going to get feedback about her, and I can select who I want to receive that feedback from, and then I can ask a question like, how did she do on this project? I can request this feedback. And then next, what we can do is go into the give feedback. So here I would also be able to give feedback proactively about someone. Say I worked really closely with Maria on a project. I can go into this and I can select the different feedback forms that we specified that were available for continuous feedback. So now I can go into continuous feedback here, and I have a nice form to guide my thoughts on this reflection. And then once I have completed this, maybe I say, very well. Then I can I can decide whether I want to share it with the manager or supervisor or not. So for this, we'll just say share. All right. So going back, that is the feedback area. I think I went through that pretty quickly. And yeah, so I guess the next step would be to go through your guys' questions from the Slido. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to hop into the Slido so we can review what those questions are. Give me 1 second. It's just going to take a bit. Okay. All right. Can you guys see my screen? Perfect. All right. So what's really helpful as well is that we do have Camille, our product manager, here to join us to help answer some of your questions. So maybe we can start this Q&A session with the first question and the most upvoted question, which is, how can secondary supervisors best access the P&D end cycles? So far, access was granted only by reporting line, which is not practical for matrix organizations.
Yes, I'll jump on. So as I hope everyone knows here, we released our multiple supervisor solution earlier this year in our core for Personio, and we're planning to adopt that in the performance and development product later this year. The goal is by the end of the year.
Great. All right. So then the next question, thank you. The next question is, can we as HR centrally track who has run through the necessary steps in the cycle and who hasn't?
Yeah, not to give too much away about what we're presenting in a few minutes around the future of P&D, but we are releasing in June kind of an overhauled analytics and monitoring solution where you'll have a central dashboard to keep track of how your employees are going along through the cycle and being able to segment that data by like team or department to understand who might be falling behind.
Great, thanks. And then the next is, the feedback includes self and external assessment. Once completed, the supervisor can arrange a meeting. How should the meeting content be documented?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I'm not sure I've heard it recently, so thanks for flagging that. Right now, there's not a place for that within the app for logging meeting notes, but something that we can consider in the future.
Yeah, thanks. Is there a way to track which supervisor hasn't completed their assigned reviews in a cycle? So far, you can only track missing by feedback recipients.
Yes, so similar answer as before with our new cycle monitoring solution. You'll have like this great dashboard to be able to see all of that.
Yeah, excited to see those slides in just a bit. All right, and then maybe we have a question or have time for a couple more, if that's all right with you guys. So as an admin, the beta performance rating form is unavailable. Is there a reason for this?
Yeah. We've only released it to 50% of customers so far. The other 50% should be released either the end of this week or by Tuesday next week. It's a holiday in Spain for some of the PMs on the team, and so we're just following up on that, but should be out in the next couple days for everyone.
Perfect. And then does Personio plan to enhance the analytical tool to provide an overview of individual average scores compared to the overall average and team-wise averages?
So the specifics around the averages would maybe want to ask a couple clarifying questions, but the short answer is yes, we are updating our analytical tools for reporting on reviews. Specifically, we're extending the reporting to include all review types. You'll be able to see all question types that are reportable, so scale questions, binary questions, etc. And you'll have that single dashboard for that comparison point.
Great. And then let's do two more then, if that's all right. Can managers also schedule the time of the talks in there, or does this need to be done by HR?
Managers should be able to do that when booking performance meetings.
And then last one, we use Personio as well to track goals and objectives. Can we score, evaluate these goals and objectives through the cycle?
Yeah, this has been a popular question. We are investing in that integration between goals and performance cycles in the second half of this year. So you should have that by the end of year.
Yeah. Great. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, and then I'm going to reshare the next slide so we can go over what's to come in the next months. All of the questions that have not been answered today, we will follow up in an email. We're going to share the Slido and the Slido responses with you guys in that email. along with a recording of the webinar as well. So for the last portion, I just wanted to go over what some of the key takeaways of today are and maybe give a couple action items to you guys as well. So today we walked through building a review cycle and also utilizing this flexibility of this dynamic cycle builder in order to use like attach templates, but also adjust the dates as per is most relevant to you. And then we also went into reviewing performance data and how we can have an overview of like how specific employees are performing across the organization. And then we also went over how to foster a feedback culture to motivate teams, a tool which that employees can use throughout the year, independent of the review cycles. So, after today's session, I would love for you guys to play around with the tool. Maybe you could run a test cycle. Maybe you can run a cycle specifically for your team if you've never played around with it before. Another thing you can do is also encourage your employees to give continuous feedback. For example, at Personio, we have Feedback Fridays, where we have 15 minutes blocked on our calendar to give feedback about any colleagues that we have current projects with or have worked closely with. And it's a great way for us to keep those important topics front of mind and give feedback when it's needed to be given. If you guys have any questions, do let us know. Add it to the Slido. We'd love to hear from you guys. So thank you so much for joining our webinar today.
And just one final plug. Thank you again for joining. I know we mentioned a lot of things that are coming. If you are interested in alpha testing or co-creating with us, please do not hesitate to reach out. We are always looking for customers who want to give feedback, who want to have early access. So again, thank you. And we're looking forward to reading all your questions and following up.
Amazing. All right. With that, I will stop the webinar, but thank you guys all for joining.